Namaste. We are right by the sun god statue behind me, and as you can see, the sun god or Savitri has an umbrella or a canopy on top of him. He rides his golden chariot and accompanied by his two wives or his consorts are two wonderful ladies, Asha, the dawn, who heralds the sun in, and Sandhya, the dusk, who bids the sun god goodbye. So long time ago, in a kingdom in India, lived a famous king called Ashwapati. Ashwapati was very prosperous. He had beautiful palaces. The land was green and verdant. There was a lot of food to eat. His subjects, his people were happy. He was a fair, a just, a wise king. But there was just one thing that made him very sad. He had no children. For 18 years, he prayed and he fasted and he asked for an invocation from the gods to be able to get him a child. Lord Savitri was very impressed by his sacrifice, and he came down to Ashwapati and said, Raja, O king, O mighty king, you are such a great king. What ails you? What are you so sad about? And he said, Oh Lord, please give me the blessings of a child. And Lord Savitri says, so be it. A year from now, exactly, a beautiful child will be born to your wife. And as he predicted, a year later, a beautiful little daughter was born to the first queen. She was bright, she was golden-eyed, she was beautiful and radiant. And that is the reason they gave her the name of Savitri. Savitri grew up to be very wise, very smart, very beautiful. She was witty, but she was also radiant. She was so radiant that all the princes were afraid to come and ask for her hand in marriage. The king didn't know what to do, and he said, Savitri, sometimes the weak and the downtrodden and the people who are not secure with themselves have a hard time asking for a lovely maiden's hand. Why don't you go forth into the kingdom with our wise men and our counselors and see if you can find a truly suitable match for yourself? So she set out. She traveled back and forth the length and the breadth of the kingdom. And on her way back, she stopped in a little forest in an hermitage. An hermitage is like an ashram, a place where people go to pray and to learn. And it's housed and peopled by monks and sadhus and great gurus and teachers. As she walked in, she noticed this young, handsome man leading a poor, old blind man behind him. His stature was tall, and he looked so handsome. She couldn't help asking her courtiers, who is this young man? He is Satyavan, they said, the virtuous. He is a very, very truthful man. Satyavan means a man of truth. But he has left his kingdom, which his father had lost, and now he lives with his father and he takes care of him in the hermitage. Savitri smiled to herself and said, aha, I think I found him. She rode back to the palace and she saw her father sitting with Narada, the wise man. And as she approached him, King Ashwapati says, come on, daughter, tell me, how were your travels? Did you find someone suitable? Yes, she said, I have. And so what is his name? Satyavan. Narada gasped, not Satyavan, Savitri. Not to say that he is not bright and virtuous and the most handsome person you could marry, but I can see the future. And I know that exactly a year from now, Satyavan will be dead. He has a short life. Ashwapati said, did you hear that, daughter? Choose someone else. Satyavan is not going to be married to you. Savitri trembled, but she was resolved and said, "No, father, I don't care how long I have with Satyavan. He is the man I want to marry. He is my soulmate. I want to marry him." The king didn't know what to do, so he looked at Narada. Narada bowed his head and said, "So be it." So the king and his courtiers go to the hermitage. They take all the preparations along in a procession, and Satyavan and Savitri walk around the sacred fire, and pretty soon they are man and wife. The old king looks at beautiful Savitri and says, "My dear princess, how will you live in a small hermitage like that and wear just matted bark and simple clothes? And the food you eat will be roots and barks and plants." And Savitri said, "I don't care whether I live in a palace or an hermitage, as long as I am by the side of Satyavan." Satyavan and Savitri spent a glorious year together. They were happy. They would go into the woods, smell the flowers, watch the beautiful peacocks and the birds. But Savitri knew that the day was coming very close when Satyavan's time would be up. 3 days before, she went to the sacred fire and started to pray and fast. And Satyavan and her parents said, "Savitri, why do you do this? Why do you suffer so?" She doesn't tell them a word. And now it's the 3rd day. As she comes out, she watches Satyavan pick up an axe and head ready to go to the woods. She says, "Satyavan, wait, I am going to come with you." But he says, "Savitri, why don't you rest? You've hardly eaten anything for 3 days. You should go and rest." She says, "No, Satyavan, I do want to come with you." So hand in hand, they go into the woods. Satyavan breaks a few logs down for firewood, while Savitri sits in the clearing, watches the beautiful birds chirping away. And right as the sun is about to go down, Satyavan holds his head and says, Oh, my dear, my head hurts. I'm not sure what's going on." Savitri lays him down with his head in her lap, and suddenly as she looks up, she sees the figure of a princely man, as tall as the tree behind him, dark, and as she looks at his eyes, they are red and bloodshot. She trembles and she says, who are you?" She is afraid she might know who it is. And he says, "Savitri, you see me because of your prayer and fasting. I am Yama, the god of death. Satyavan's time has come. I need to take him away to my kingdom." "No, please, please don't do that, Yama. Satyavan is my husband, my happiness. Please don't take him away from me." "I'm sorry, but his time has come. Nobody can alter the fate and the march of time." She sees he has a noose in his hand, and he puts it around Satyavan, and he takes out the likeness, a small likeness, just the size of your thumb, puts it under his cloak, and begins to walk towards the south where his domain is. Savitri runs back behind him. "Please, please wait, Yama. Don't take Satyavan away. He's my life, my happiness. I have to be with him." "Stop," says Yama. "You cannot go to the land of the dead. You are alive. You cannot follow me. Yama will take him to the land of the dead. And don't worry, Satyavan has been a virtuous man. He will have a good life in my domain." No, please don't do that." As Yama keeps walking up and up the hill, he turns around and there is Savitri still behind him. "Stop," he says, "Savitri. Do not follow me. That is no place for you. But I am impressed by your devotion and your will. Tell me, what do you wish to have? You can ask me for a wish, but do not ask me for the life of Satyavan." She thinks for a moment and says, "In that case, sir, please return my father-in-law's sight and his kingdom back to him." "So be it," he says. He turns around and begins to walk up the hill. Savitri still follows him. She goes through the bushes. Her sari is torn and frazzled. Yama, of course, moves very smoothly through the bushes. And as he walks up, again he watches her coming back and says, Savitri, you have to stop. I've told you, you cannot follow me to the land of the dead. But you are so wise and so devoted. Tell me, what do you wish for? And at that time she says, I wish my father would have many more sons so he can have a prince to give his kingdom to. So be it, says Yama, and begins to walk up the hill again. And he hears the rustling in the bushes. He says, Savitri, stop following me. I've reminded you again and again. Ask me for one last wish, and after that, be gone. But remember, you cannot ask me for the life of Satyavan. Savitri thinks to herself and very quietly says, Yama, please grant me children, and may my children be from Satyavan. May Satyavan be the father of my children. Yama is surprised at her request and says, Savitri, you haven't asked for his life, but I cannot grant you this wish without giving him back the life of Satyavan. And he's impressed and he says, not only are you beautiful and wise, but you have your wits about you. And at that time, he takes the noose out, releases the spirit of Satyavan, which flies to the north, and says, go, Savitri. For the first time, you have won back the life of your husband. She runs down the hill, walks back to the clearing, and just as she reaches the place where she has left Satyavan, Satyavan is waking up, looking around, and he says, oh my God, have I been sleeping all this time? I'm sure I saw this big dark figure picking me up at some point. Savitri smiles and says, nothing to worry, dear. Let's go back home. And as soon as they go back home, they see Satyavan's father, and he's able to see them. And they are overjoyed. And pretty soon, his kingdom is returned to him. Satyavan and Savitri rule for many years, and they have many children. And then, when Yama comes to get them in their old age, they happily go with him because their time is done. And today also you will hear the story in every courtyard, in every village, as an example of the great devotion of a woman to her husband.